Hi, it's Alistair McIntyre at Electric Scotland. This video is about the Scottish Innovation Party because I'm hoping to get anyone that views this involved in the process, and I hope maybe you'll tell lots of other people about it so that more and more people could get involved. Essentially, it was created because I was finding great difficulty in finding discussions about how Scotland could be a successful independent country. I mean, there's tons of discussion on Brexit, NDREF2 and all of this kind of stuff, but on the whole it's a pretty bad-tempered discussion that's going on in the newspapers and online. And it seems to be people are just calling each other names all the time. It doesn't matter if you've got really good ideas, people just rubbish you, or if they can't rubbish your facts, they'll rubbish you personally. All that's really just inexcusable in my view. So what I wanted to do was try to create an area where I could put up good information that hopefully people will get involved with and come up with their ideas of how Scotland could be successful. For example, you know, we're talking right now about if we went independent, there'd be a 15 billion black hole in our finances. Well, you know, in a lot of ways that's irrelevant, because at the end of the day, what do the Scottish people want out of an independent Scotland? I mean, it's all right being emotional. It wouldn't be great for Scotland to be an independent country. Yeah, of course, it'd be marvellous. But at the end of the day, we have to live and work in that independent country. And it has to work for the people of Scotland for it to be a successful nation in its own right. So how do we get there? What do we want? What is our ambitions for what an independent Scotland could do for us and our families and us in the world? And that's what I'd like to get talking about. How can we succeed and how can we do well? So, you know, for example, the reason I called it the Scottish Innovation Party was the innovation bit that I wanted to really look at. And so I decided that I've been reading certain things just by reading the news all over the world. I've come across articles about something or other, and I thought, hey, that's pretty damn good. I wonder if we could do that in Scotland. Because I think it would work, you know. But I'm thinking, well, where do I ask the question? And how do I get it discussed? And I haven't a clue where to go to get it discussed, I have to say. Because a lot of those sites don't give the option to add comments, so you can't really follow up the conversation really. And so I thought to myself, well, let me create this section, because at least on my website you can email me directly, and if it's relevant I will post your comments to me up on the site, on that page. But also I've got a comment system on my site using Disqus. But basically, if you want to put a comment up on anything I put up, you can do that. I mean, admittedly, I moderate them. Every comment is moderated by me personally, and thankfully I don't get that many comments in that I can't manage that, but I can certainly handle a lot more than I'm getting at the moment. It's very quick and easy to do that. But essentially, I just think, well, you know, I mean, for example, at the moment, we're in receipt of the money from the Barnett formula. And people seem to think that's bad, and it's good for whatever reason you want. But, you know, at the end of the story, we are in the United Kingdom right now, and the whole point of the United Kingdom is we share resources so that everyone in the country gets equal treatment. And we all know that Scotland, while most people live in the central belt, the thing is a lot of them also live in the rural communities and the islands. And of course it's a lot more expensive to give that level of commitment and its social security and health and everything to those rural communities. So it's only right that we should get subsidised to some degree to do that. Because after all, we did contribute billions to the UK from when we had good oil and gas revenues. But now that we no longer have that revenue, the UK is now returning the money to us. But it's not like that, it's because we share to have a common standard within the United Kingdom. Whether you like it or not, that's the way it works. And I would just point out that if you read history, and vast majority of you who watch this do not, but if you read the history of the Union of Parliaments, there was a lot of unrest at the time because people didn't want to give up their independence. So we're going to lose our name, Scotland, but England lost their name as well, and now it became Britain. So, and there was very good reasons for the Union of Parliaments at that time, but about 50 years on, Scotland was making a fortune because we were in the United Kingdom, because we got access to all these markets that we were previously refused access to. Glasgow became the second city of empire. I mean, huge we were. And the Scots went out in the world and actually just did amazing things all over the world. I mean, we talk about the Highland clearances, but frankly, they were only a small proportion of the people that emigrated, because people saw fantastic opportunities to own their own land, where they didn't need to pay taxes and rent and stuff like that. They would own their own land. And so a lot of people that went over to Canada, America, Australia, New Zealand and South Africa and that ended up doing extremely well. And they themselves became part of the governments of all of those countries as well, and did amazing things for their new adopted country. And so part of what we got there was the Commonwealth. And I think to myself, the Commonwealth, being part of the Commonwealth, gives us opportunities that perhaps we don't realise are available to us. And so it's things like this I wanted to talk about. But I also wanted to talk about things that I read and I thought, that sounds like it would be an answer to our obesity problem. That sounds like it would be an answer to healthier eating and cheaper food. Could we do this in Scotland? And so what I've done with the Scottish Innovation Party section, I've taken sections like health and so forth, and I've basically put these stories up that I've read. I mean, for example, one is the Amma canteens in India, where the local Indian population gets really cheap but very nutritious meals for a fraction of what they had to pay before. And I talk about food waste and how perfectly good food is being dumped into the ground. And I'm thinking there must be ways that we can use that food waste to get cheaper food, rather than it being ploughed up and the farmer makes nothing and actually loses money. He could maybe get something rather than nothing. And that's surely got to be good. So, I mean, looking at nuclear power, you know, I mean, nuclear power had tremendous problems on waste disposal. It's radioactive, cost a fortune to store the radioactive waste. But the new nuclear plants that are being talked about today have actually almost zero waste. And it seems they're a lot safer, a lot better, and they can build smaller ones. And it struck me that they'd be more green than wind power in a sense, you know. So I'm thinking maybe we should bring the new nuclear power stations back into the energy equation, because clearly oil and gas is not good for us in the long term. I mean, Canada's got the same problem, for example, because they've got these huge reserves. I mean, I think this is, was it the second largest reserves in the world as far as oil goes. But it's the tar sands, and there's a lot of problems with that. But we're moving away from that and going to green energy, and I think nuclear should be part of that. And so whether you agree or not, what I'm trying to do is get articles and videos that I've watched and have convinced me that this is at least worth looking at seriously. I'm not saying we're going to adopt any of them, but I just think this has a lot of sense to me, and I think we should pursue it and see whether we could work it in Scotland. And so what I'm trying to do is put a bit of a summary about where we stand now in Scotland, and then provide information for research. For example, under education, we were always the best educated people in the world. I mean, Scottish education was always held out around the world as being the finest education you could get. And that's why so many of our pioneers got great jobs and great opportunities when they went overseas, because they were exactly the kind of pioneers they wanted. Highly intelligent, well-educated people that really knew how to work hard. And so we were the cream of the pioneer crop, you might say, when we went out into the world. And so all I'm trying to say is, if we want an independent country, we have to examine what we would like our country to do. Because someone will say, oh great, we've got independence, now what do we do? Now we've got independence. Oh, I hadn't really thought about that. Well, but we're independent, yay! But if we want a national health service, we've either got to find ways of funding it that gives us the finest national health service anywhere in the world. And so therefore we have to ask the questions, are we willing to pay for that? And if we're not willing to pay for it, then we're not going to have the finest health service in the world. So we've got to start discussing what needs to be spent on the National Health Service and where we can genuinely help to cut costs. I mean, like obesity is one of the major costs for the National Health Service because there is associated problems with diabetes, heart attacks, all of this kind of stuff. So it costs the National Health Service a lot of money to have obese people. So how can we tackle obesity? So that would be like one of the questions we should be asking and exploring. How can we do better? I mean, I had a story that in Glasgow, they did a 10-year program about teaching the Glaswegians to eat healthier. And yes, some of them did, but the ones, the poorest end of the field, the ones that basically aren't being engaged in this new world that we're living in because of inequality and stuff, ended up at the end of the 10 years that Glasgow was worse than it was at the start of the 10-year program. And that's because it was rich people and wealthy people and very intelligent people that ran these experiments and trials. And unfortunately, none of them thought that, hey, these guys can't actually afford to buy fruit and vegetables. And they certainly can't afford to buy enough of that would make any difference. And when you eat a meat pie, it fills you up. Well, you eat a nice salad, it doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't fill you up. And so they fail to understand the costs involved in these kind of programs. If you're asking the poorest people to spend more money on eating better, they say, ha, we haven't got the money to spend, son, so forget all your stupid rubbish you're talking to us. We want practical solutions. Are you going to give us a cheaper meat pie? That would be good. If you chuck some free veg in with it, we'll eat the veg. No problem with that. But am I going to pay more and actually get less to eat? No, thank you, bye. And so, you know, I'm thinking there's just so many things that we could be looking at. And so that's what I've done. I've taken the Scottish Innovation Party and launched it on the website. I've put sections up for things that I think we need to look at, trying to summarise where we are today, and then putting, wherever I find an idea, if it comes out of India, China, America, Belgium, France, wherever it comes from, and I'm reading the article about something that people are making a change, I'm thinking, that sounds really a great idea. I think we should look at that. Now, I'm not saying we should adopt it, but I'm saying this is worth looking at least to see whether we could adopt it. And so I'm putting up videos of the talks that I'm watching about these topics and articles where I've read them. I've posted up the articles on the site for you to read. And so what I'd like you to do is read some of those articles and watch some of the videos. And then I have a comment system on the site. It's run by Discus. So it's an international comment system that's well used on a lot of websites. And so if you've got an email account with, or you've got an account with Facebook, Twitter, Yahoo, Google, you know, you can use those to log in and add your comment. But what I'd like to do is try and have a higher standard, because to be honest, a lot of the comments on newspaper sites are, to me, a total waste of time. You can just say, load of rubbish. Well, that doesn't advance the argument in any which way at all. If that's all you can say, I would rather not hear from you. But if you say this is a load of rubbish and this is why, and start to give factual information about why it just wouldn't work in Scotland, then I'm happy to have that up on the site. And perhaps someone else could go and say, well, actually that's rubbish because here's why it would work in Scotland, and give their point. Then we've got a really good discussion going on, and maybe we can change people's minds as a result. But to just rubbish thing out of hand is frankly a waste of time, and it's a waste of our intelligence. So I'd like to think that you might decide yourself that, look, if Germany is starting to attack us, remember, Germany caused millions of deaths over 2 world wars because they were arrogant enough to believe they could run the world. And unfortunately, they also run the EU, and they're arrogant enough to believe they can run the world through the EU. They haven't given up their dreams of global power by any manner of means. And unfortunately, German manufacturing is starting to go down the tubes. I mean, look at Volkswagen. Volkswagen is just terrible these days. I mean, they're crooks. They are genuinely crooks and criminals. And they're being fined billions. Why are we buying German cars in the UK and Scotland? Why? If you're running a Volkswagen, you're not doing very well for Scotland, that's for sure. Why can't we get our own car company again in Scotland? We had the Hillman Imp, if I remember right, it was the only one that we've had in Scotland. But we had Ecuria Kos, who won 2 24-hour Le Mans victories for us. That was a homegrown industry. So why can't we have maybe a new electric car industry in Scotland and bring it back, use our steel production to build the cars? I mean, that's what we should be looking at, and looking to see whether we can do even better in shipbuilding. I mean, at the moment we rely on the UK government to give us these naval contracts. But, you know, there was a guy came over from, I think it was Singapore, he was out and looking at the shipbuilding out there, and he's very successful out there. He's a professor, doctorate and stuff in that kind of areas. And when he came back to Scotland, he said there was a phenomenal opportunity there for Scots, but no one would listen to him. And that's why I hope that kind of guy will come onto the SIP site and actually post up his ideas so we can share them with everyone. And that's what I'd like everyone to do, wherever you are in the world. If you're interested in Scotland at all, and you know things that are happening that could benefit Scotland, please send a comment in, send me an email, add a comment or whatever, or give me a link to a site I can go to where I can read what you're proposing. Because that's what we want to do, is see how can we do better, how can we be innovative as a country, how can we become a really outstandingly successful independent country. I know whichever way we do that, we still retain good links with the rest of the UK. Because after all, that's a major market of ours at the moment. That's no reason why it can't become less, because we do better overseas, because we do better exporting. I mean, clearly, if you can export to a country with your own language, that's why Scotland's biggest actual exports are to England and the rest of the UK and to America. After that, it's the European countries that on the whole don't speak English. So we're clearly an English-focused market as far as our exporters go. So that also means that we could do a lot better with the Commonwealth. Commonwealth has got 2.3 billion people in it, whereas the European Union have got 500 million people. So that's a much larger market if we went for the Commonwealth, where they speak it, where they have similar laws and so forth. Surely we could be looking at that, and I make a point within the SIP to say let's examine that as a potential market for us. Because to be honest, our exporters are pretty lazy people, and a lot of people that could export don't. And I will bet my bottom dollar anyone looking to sell products from Scotland to England just simply don't look at that as export at all. Look at just selling to the local market. Because there are no costs for selling to England. None. I mean, yeah, you've got to ship it down to the country, but you have to ship it anyway. So it's just as easy to ship it to Glasgow as it is to London, really, at the end of the day. So that's why I think we need to look at how we can make Scotland better. We need to be prepared to learn from other people. And I say, even if we don't pick up what they're doing, we might pick up some of what they're doing, because some of it would work in Scotland, maybe not all of it. So that's what I'm trying to do. But you have to read. You have to invest some time and effort to really contribute to this discussion, so that Scotland could be a much better place. And if you want Scotland to be independent, we have to address issues that are going to be difficult. It may well be that, because I think the SNP are desperately trying not to cut services, because they keep getting less money, because as an economy we're not being very successful, and much less successful than England is currently. So the trouble with the SNP is they don't want to raise taxes, because they think that's a vote loser. And we haven't had a discussion to say maybe the people of Scotland are happy, or not happy, but are willing to pay more to get more. So if the health service is not doing so well and it needs an extra $500 million stuffed into it or something, then maybe we are prepared to pay an extra couple of pence in tax, or 5 pence in tax, or 10 pence in tax, to get the kind of service we want. But then we also have to ask if the service is being misused, because it's free, people just pop in. But as I say, if you've got a cold, do you need to go see the doctor? I mean, there's plenty of cold remedy, just buy it off the shelf. But maybe if you go and see the doctor, you get a prescription, it doesn't cost you anything. Well, that's taking up the doctor's time, which means it's less time for him to see people that maybe have a more serious problem. I mean, there's all kinds of repercussions, because we are selfish in wanting everything for nothing. And so I think we have to look at how we might get around some of these issues. And as I say, that's why I want people to tell me their ideas, because if we can get a really good discussion going, and more people get involved in that, and hopefully the comments will be really top notch, and so we want to read the comments, to read people's views and ideas, then we can really start a discussion on how Scotland can be super successful as an independent nation. So that's basically my plea. It's one, I suppose, get off your backside and actually do something for a change. And if you're going to comment, please comment with factual information, or facts as you see them. But don't just rubbish something for the sake of rubbishing it. Tell us why you don't think this is a good idea, or why it won't work. Try and give us some ideas of why you think that. And let's say if you've got a good idea, or you've seen an article on a paper in Outer Mongolia, you think, hey, that's working for them, I'm sure it worked for us in Scotland, then send me the link to the site where I can have that discussion going on. So I mean, get involved. But please don't sit back and do nothing. That's why we're not going to be successful as a country, if we sit back and do nothing and just accept whatever comes to us. And I say, I would love to see more honesty with our politicians. Unfortunately, as I say, when you join the SNP, your brain gets shut down and you get a little chip put in it, so you all speak exactly the same words, exactly the same voice, with everything that's going on. That to me is not politics. That to me is just totalitarianism, basically. Don't want that. I want people to be honest. If they don't think something's right, they should be able to say it's not right, and hopefully get a discussion to get it right, And as I say, it's going to cost us an arm and a leg over the next 10 years to make Scotland right, but we need to be convinced that that 10 years is not going to go to 15, 20 and forever. We need to see a proper programme, so that while we are paying more tax initially, eventually we'll pay less tax. So, just because we need to pay more for something doesn't mean to say we're not prepared to pay more. So, there you go. That's the Scottish Innovation Party trying to bring new ideas and new thinking to the independence debate, and how hopefully through innovation in thinking and changing our minds on things, or changing our views, we can actually make Scotland a successful country in its own right. So, please get involved, And I say I'll put a link to the SIP section of the site below. If you read the comments, you'll see the link to the site there. Thanks for listening, and hope some of you will get involved. And please tell others about it, so hopefully we can get more and more people going and become a real source inspiration for us to be a successful independent country. Thank you.